As U.S. policy on China unfolds during the second term of newly re-elected President Barack Obama, three important areas to watch will be Washington's so-called U.S. pivot to enlarge the U.S. presence in Asia, military and otherwise, ongoing trade tensions, including tariffs on U.S. imports from China, and finally, the overall atmosphere of bilateral relations between China and the U.S. Welcome to another edition of Across America Talk. As usual, I'm joined by China Daily's Chen Weihua and Zhou Boris. Welcome. Let's start with you, Weihua. Now that Obama has been re-elected, and what kind of an overtone of U.S.-China relations from now to the end of Obama's presidency?
Well, if you compare with the campaign season, the tone will be totally different because the election campaign always brings out the worst of the politics, I would say. You had heard plenty of China bashing. I think I'm happy this season is finally over. But that doesn't mean you're not going to hear noises about the relationship, because the problems between our countries are real. They will continue to be there because the larger the relationship, the more problem, the more friction we're going to have. That's just the nature of the relationship. But that said, often, if you only read the newspaper, watch the television, you are bombarded with all sort of the questions on the relationship. You kind of overlook the big picture, which is a lot of positive things are happening between the two countries. So many Chinese students are coming to the U.S., American students are going to China. Our trade economic relationship actually is growing enormously over the years, and it's still growing. U.S. exports to China is growing faster than to any other market. So this has not been emphasized in the news media, unfortunately. But my concern is, Obama, without this sort of a pressure of the being re-elected again, now it's his second term, he could push for more sort of a realistic agenda, And China and the U.S. are more interdependent in each other than ever before. So the two countries can only thrive, by pursuing a win-win situation, not a lose-lose game. So if that is understanding, I believe that's the wisdom of the leaders of the two countries, and I don't think they are crazy people at all. And so I believe they have the wisdom to push the relationship on a healthy, path. And that will be not just great news for the two countries, but for the whole world, because the whole world cannot see China and the U.S. going into conflict.
I think we also need to wait to see what the dynamic will be between, not that it comes down to personalities, of course, as Weihua says, the relationship at this point is so important that whoever is in charge in either country is going to have that baseline of, necessary understanding to facilitate, an improvement, or at the very least stability in the relationship. But it will be interesting to see once China's new leadership settles in, and the first bilateral meeting with President Obama in China or in the U.S. Probably the trade relationship is solid despite some disputes along the way.
Yeah, exactly, Zhou. You mentioned about trade disputes, and of course, trade is a very important area when it comes to China-U.S. relations. And we've discussed previously, U.S. Recently affirmed tariffs on imports of Chinese solar panels, and Obama's frequently mentioned in the latest stages of the campaign his tough trade positions on China. Should we expect more of such, similar tough tones on China?
Well, the president is going to be under increasing pressure from labor unions. Just today at the White House, in fact, he met with several leading labor leaders, and they're going to want something from the administration in terms of economic policy, not least of which is going to be demands that the U.S., start enforcing the rules as organized labor in the U.S. sees it against China in forums like the World Trade Organization, and it will be difficult, especially considering the president's own rhetoric, which in the last televised debate, as we talked about, really eclipsed that even of his, rhetorically tough-talking opponent Mitt Romney in terms of trade policy vis-a-vis China. So I think, yes, it's unlikely that on the ground you're certainly not going to see a diminution of individual goods under review by the administration. In fact, we just had the affirmation of the solar panel tariffs that you mentioned. They're not going to be retroactive, which is something, I guess you could say, of a compromise. But I would imagine that other goods will come up for review, especially in auto parts, which was something that the president touted in the latter stages of the campaign. Auto parts, tires.
Also, some Chinese companies, telecommunication companies, are having a lot of challenges.
Right. Well,
in
there's
US
another.
too.
You're referring, I would imagine, to the Huawei and ZTE cases, and that's a related point on national security. I guess I wonder if it's in the and I'm thoroughly speculating here, so I please don't hold me to anything I'm surmising, but I wonder if it's in the president's mind or anyone in the administration to maybe work on a grand bargain with China over some of these trade issues, and maybe it's certainly, I don't know if we could expect some. We've heard terms like recalibration of strategy. I wonder if I have to wonder if it might now be time for the Obama administration to sit down with China's new leadership, incoming leadership, and maybe discuss things in a broader framework rather than. I mean, it's certainly. I have no idea whether something like that might be in the offing, but it seems like maybe the big thinkers on China and policy may want to consider something like that.
Let's go back to Obama's Asia trip. And the Obama administration has said it will, quote, pivot to a higher profile in Asia, as we said, with the president in his final pre-election debate against Mitt Romney, suggesting the U.S. is responding to China's growing power in the region. So is a military standoff in the South China Sea possible?
Well, I think that's a hypothetical question, but I think, everything is possible, I would say. But as I said earlier, I think I believe the leaders of both countries have the wisdom to try to avoid the conflict, the military standoff, because that would be a big disaster for the two nations and the world, the region in Asia, which is the most vital economic region, in the world. But that said, I think, what should be pursued is more conversation at high level, at all levels. More trust should be built up. Between our military and between the government official, between all kinds of institutions and people, sort of build a win-win situation for U.S., China, and China's neighbors in the region. I don't think anyone want a conflict because obviously. Japan doesn't want, I think Korea doesn't want, Philippines, Vietnam, and China doesn't want, because China just needs a very peaceful region and the world for its own development, and like it has enjoyed in the last 3 decades. But I think right now, the problem, China has suspected that the U.S. tried to take advantage of China's sort of problem with neighbors, try to take advantage of the situation. That's, I think, U.S. should make efforts to disperse China's concern and should play a fair role. Because right now, I think it's hard for U.S. to play that kind of role because U.S. Sort of put Asian countries in different categories, like Japan, Korea as allies, some as partner, China as another category. So how can you be impartial if you put countries in different groups?
Okay, excellent points. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for watching. For more information, please check out our website, ChinaDailyUSA.com.
It's growing enormously over the years, and it's still growing. U.S. exports from China is growing faster than any other market.